Horror is as old as cinema. But then we knew that already. We knew about Boris Karloff, Bela Lugosi, Vincent Price, and Roger Corman movies. We even know about German Expressionism with Nosferatu and The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari. But here are a few little gems that you might have missed. Let's start with the earliest one, The Lodger, a story of the London fog from 1927.
Directed by a young Alfred Hitchcock, this British silent film is a landmark of early cinema and a crucial entry in the director's renowned career. Set against the backdrop of a London gripped by fear over a serial killer known as the Avenger, who targets only young, blonde women, the story follows a mysterious new lodger, a quiet and eccentric man, who moves into the home of the Bunting family. The family's daughter, Daisy, is a blonde model who, along with her police detective boyfriend, becomes increasingly suspicious of the man's odd behavior. He keeps strange hours, paces his room late at night, and seems to hide a dark secret. The film masterfully employs visual storytelling to build suspense, using stark expressionist lighting and innovative camera work to create an atmosphere of paranoia and unease. Hitchcock skillfully plays on the audience's assumptions and fears, leaving the lodger's true identity an ambiguous and tense mystery for much of the film. The Lodger established many of the themes and visual motifs that would define Hitchcock's work for decades to come, including the wrongful accusation of an innocent man and a deep fascination with suspense and psychological terror.
And from the same year, we have The Cat and the Canary.
Paul Lenny's silent film is a quintessential old dark house mystery and a masterful example of German Expressionism applied to a Hollywood production. The film's plot unfolds 20 years after the death of eccentric millionaire Cyrus West, when his relatives gather at his gothic, remote mansion to hear the reading of his will. The will stipulates that the heir, a young woman named Annabelle West, must be certified sane by a doctor, otherwise the inheritance will pass to the next person on the list. The night quickly descends into a chaotic nightmare. Annabelle is plagued by unsettling warnings and threats, and the family is trapped inside as a dangerous lunatic, who has escaped from an asylum, is said to be lurking on the premises. Lenny's direction is a visual feast, using distorted shadows, bizarre camera angles, and menacing sets to create a pervasive sense of dread and claustrophobia. The film masterfully balances elements of horror and suspense with moments of levity from some of the family members' antics. Its gothic atmosphere, jump scares, and classic mystery elements became the blueprint for countless haunted house thrillers and comedy horrors that would follow.
Moving to 1932, here's a true classic, Freaks.
Tod Browning's Freaks is one of the most controversial and transgressive films ever made. It is a cinematic oddity that pushes the boundaries of horror by featuring a cast comprised almost entirely of real-life sideshow performers, often referred to as freaks at the time. The film is set within a traveling circus and centers on a beautiful trapeze artist, Cleopatra, who conspires with her lover, the strongman Hercules, to poison a wealthy dwarf named Hans to inherit his fortune. However, the circus's close-knit community of freaks embraces a strict code of loyalty and vengeance against those who betray them. The film's power lies in its unique and unsettling perspective. It portrays the freaks as sympathetic, three-dimensional characters with their own lives and morals, while exposing the cruelty and greed of the conventionally beautiful normal people. The final act, a chilling and visceral sequence of poetic justice, shocked audiences and led to the film being banned or heavily censored for decades. Today, Freaks is regarded as a powerful statement against prejudice and a deeply unsettling psychological horror film that is not easily forgotten.
Another one from 1932, The Old Dark House.
Directed by James Whale, who would go on to create cinematic masterpieces like Frankenstein and The Invisible Man, The Old Dark House is a key transitional film that blends suspense, gothic horror, and dark humor. The plot follows 5 travelers who become stranded during a torrential storm and seek refuge in the isolated, dilapidated manor of the eccentric family. The family is composed of the stern, religious patriarch, Horace, his pyromaniac sister, Rebecca, their mute and terrifying butler, Morgan, and their centenarian father, who is bedridden but holds the key to the family's secrets. To complicate matters, there is a monstrous, homicidal brother locked away upstairs. As the night progresses, the travelers become increasingly embroiled in the family's strange and dangerous history. The film is a masterclass in atmosphere and character. Whale expertly uses the shadowy, claustrophobic setting to build tension while infusing the dialogue with a wry wit. It is a foundational entry in the old dark house subgenre, establishing many of its familiar tropes, the isolated setting, the eccentric inhabitants, and the dark secret, and proving that horror could be both genuinely scary and darkly comedic.
Next up is a film from 1934, featuring 2 horror legends, The Black Cat.
The Black Cat is a highly atmospheric and surreal pre-code horror film that brought together the 2 giants of the genre, Boris Karloff and Bela Lugosi, for the first time. The plot centers on a honeymooning couple who are involved in a bus accident and seek shelter at the minimalist, Art Deco-style home of architect Jalmar Polzig, played by Karloff. Their rescuer is Dr. Vitus Werdegast, a man who survived a World War I prison camp, played by Lugosi, and is now obsessed with finding his family and exacting revenge on the man he blames for his years of imprisonment, Polzig. The film's dark subject matter was unprecedented for its time, delving into themes of Satanism, necrophilia, torture, and revenge. It is less about monsters and more about the depravity of human nature. The narrative is driven by the chilling psychological battle between Karloff's suave, Satan-worshipping architect and Lugosi's haunted, revenge-driven psychiatrist. The film's sparse set design and dreamlike quality create a disturbing and genuinely unnerving tone. The Black Cat stands as a unique and deeply unsettling work in the universal horror canon, pushing cinematic boundaries in ways that would not be seen again for decades due to the enforcement of the Hays Code.
Interestingly, The Cat and the Canary was remade in 1939.
This is the second famous adaptation of the same stage play, but unlike its 1927 predecessor, this version is a full-fledged horror comedy. Starring the rapid-fire comedian Bob Hope and the glamorous Paulette Goddard, the film embraces the conventions of the old dark house mystery not to terrify, but to make audiences laugh. The plot is the same. The wealthy, eccentric patriarch Cyrus West has died, and his relatives must spend the night in his eerie, decaying mansion to hear the reading of his will. The will names a young woman, Joyce, as the sole heir, but only if she is judged sane after a night in the spooky house. Bob Hope plays Wally Campbell, a radio personality who is one of the inheritors and acts as the audience's surrogate, cracking jokes and commenting on the absurdity of the situation as ghouls and murderers emerge from the shadows. The film cleverly uses the traditional Gothic tropes, secret passages, hidden panels, and a mysterious killer, as a backdrop for Hope's signature cowardly bravado. His frantic, wisecracking performance became the defining element of the film, making it a classic example of how comedy could be used to subvert and satirize the horror genre.
Then we have The Ghostbreakers from 1940, another Bob Hope film.
Following the success of their collaboration in the 1939 The Cat and the Canary, Bob Hope and Paulette Goddard reunited for this equally iconic horror comedy. Hope stars as Larry Lawrence, a New York radio personality who goes on the run after he believes he has committed a murder. He hides in the luggage of a beautiful heiress, Mary Carter, Paulette Goddard, who is traveling to Cuba to claim her inherited castle. The castle, however, is rumored to be haunted by a long line of vengeful spirits and even zombies. As they investigate the spooky happenings, Larry, armed only with his witty one-liners and cowardly antics, must protect Mary from both the supernatural threats and the very real human culprits who are trying to steal the castle's treasure. The Ghostbreakers perfectly captures the lively spirit of its genre, seamlessly blending genuine moments of suspense with Hope's signature physical comedy and clever dialogue. It's a delightful mix of Gothic mystery, ghost story, and screwball comedy, cementing Hope's persona as the frightened but ultimately heroic everyman who can talk his way out of any terrifying situation.
And finally, from 1944, a classic black comedy, Arsenic and Old Lace.
Frank Capra's cinematic adaptation of the hit Broadway play is a timeless black comedy that takes a truly morbid premise and turns it into a frantic farce. The film stars Cary Grant in one of his most manic and memorable performances as Mortimer Brewster, a drama critic who has just married the woman of his dreams. However, his idyllic day is shattered when he discovers that his two sweet and elderly aunts, Abby and Martha, have a macabre secret. They are benevolent serial killers who poison lonely old men with elderberry wine and bury the bodies in their cellar. The chaos escalates when Mortimer's criminally insane brother, Jonathan, a murderer himself, arrives with his alcoholic plastic surgeon sidekick, and his other brother, Teddy, who believes he is Teddy Roosevelt and is digging the Panama Canal in the basement. Cary Grant's wild, eye-popping reactions and breakneck-paced dialogue are the engine of the film's comedy. Arsenic and Old Lace is a brilliant satire on the quaintness of small-town life, a masterpiece of screwball pacing, and a prime example of a film that finds its humor in the most ghoulish and unlikely of situations.